Evening, my little angel. Mom, what is an orchestra? I received a question with the same content from 4 of you through my yellow and email after the last story time. And now, we'll find out the answer. Orchestra, as described in the previous chapter of Totto-chan's story, is an amalgamation of performances by a group of artists, also known as musicians, playing different instruments who performed European musical compositions many years ago called classical music. A typical classical orchestra consists of 4 different types of tunes. Stringed instruments such as violin, viola, cello, and double bass. Woodwind instruments such as flute, oboe, and clarinet. Brass instruments such as brasses, trombones, cornets, and tubas. Percussion instruments including drums, percussions, and so on. Other instruments such as piano and harp, sometimes also electronic devices and guitars to perform particular and new works. A large-scale Western orchestra can sometimes have as many as 70 to over 100 musicians. Orchestras typically have about 50 musicians, and orchestras are usually conducted by a conductor. The conductor guides the performance with hand and arm movements. To make it easier to the musicians to see, the conductor uses a short wooden stick called a baton or maestro staff. The conductor controls the tempo of the instruments involved in creating a chorus. Violin leader, like Totto-chan's dad, leads the other musicians in the orchestra in rhythmic coordination under the conductor's guidance. Some other questions Há Cảo and Gặm Sách want to answer you in their own column. Let you wait for them. For now, we are going on a trip with Totto-chan. This will be Totto-chan's last summer outing. A trip to a hot spring. Summer vacation came to an end, and the day of the trip to the hot spring resort finally arrived. It was considered by the students to be Tomoe's main event. Not many things surprised Mother, but when Totto-chan came home from school one day and asked, "May I go on the hot spring trip with the others?" she was flabbergasted. Mother had heard of old people visiting hot springs in groups, but not first graders. But after she read the headmaster's letter carefully, she thought it was an excellent idea and admired his plan. The trip was to be a seaside school at a place called Toi on the Izu Peninsula in Shizuoka. There was a hot spring in the sea where the children could both swim and take hot baths. The trip would last 3 days and 2 nights. The father of one of the Tomoe students had a vacation home there, where all 50 of the Tomoe students from 1st through 6th grades could stay. Mother, of course, agreed. The Tomoe students assembled at the school on the appointment day before setting off. "Now then," said the headmaster when they were all together, "we're traveling by train and by ship, and I don't want any of you to get lost. Do you understand? All right, off we go." That was his only instruction, yet the children were amazingly well behaved when they got on the Tokyo train at Chiyugaoka. Nobody ran up and down the cars, and the only talking was done quietly among those sitting beside each other. The Tomoe pupils had never been told to get in line, walk properly, keep quiet on the train, and not drop litter on the floor when they ate. Their daily school life had somehow instilled into them that they mustn't push people smaller or weaker than themselves. That unruly behavior was something to be ashamed of. That whenever they came across litter, they should pick it up, and that they should try not to do anything that annoyed or disturbed others. Strangest of all was that Totto-chan, who had been upsetting her whole school only a few months before by talking to the street musicians out of the window in the middle of class, stayed at her desk and did her lessons correctly from the day she started as Tomoe. If any of the teachers from the other school could have seen her now, sitting properly with the others on a train, they could have said, "It mustn't someone else." At Numazu, they embarked on a ship just like what they had all dreamed about. It wasn't a big ship, but they were all so excited that they inspected every corner of the deck, feeling this or hanging from that. When it finally sailed, the children waved to the stone folk of the pier. Soon the sea became very rough. Totto-chan began to feel ill, as did some others. But just then, one of the older boys got up and stood amidship, pretending to be a stabilizer. When the ship rode, he could run to one side, saying, "Oops!" and he would run to other way with another "Oops!" It was so funny the children couldn't help laughing even though they felt so seasick, and they were still laughing when the ship arrived at Toi. The curious thing was that after they disembarked, the poor Oops boy began to feel sick just when everyone else had recovered and was feeling fine. Toi was in a quiet, beautiful village on the sea surrounded by wooded hills. After a short rest, the teachers took the children to the sea. It was different from the swimming pool at school, so they wore their swimsuits. The hot spring in the sea was most unusual. It was not enclosed, so there was no line to set off the hot spring from the rest of the sea. If you crouched down where you were towards the hot spring, the hot water came up to your neck, and it felt lovely, just like being in a hot bath. If you wanted to go into the sea from the hot spring, all you had to do was move about several meters sideways, and the waters gradually got cooler. The further you went, the colder it got, and you knew you were in the sea. So, after you had been swimming about in the ocean and began to feel cold, all you have to do was hurry back to the hot spring and have a hot bath up to your neck. It was just like at home, and it looked so funny. While the bathing cup the children were swimming about normally in the regular sea, the ones in the hot spring part were relaxing in a circle, chatting just as they were in the bath. Anyone watching would have thought, why even youngsters act just like old people when they get in the hot spring bath. In those days, the seashore was so deserted it was like being on their own private beach, and the children enjoyed this unusually hot spring sea bath to the utmost. When they returned to the house in the evening after staying in the water for so long, their fingers were a mass of wrinkles. And once they were tucked into their quilts each night, the children took turns telling ghost stories. Totto-chan and the other first graders got so frightened they cried, but despite their tears, they could ask, "And then what happened?" Unlike camping inside the school and the bravery test, the 3-day stay at Toi was a real-life experience. For example, they were sent in turns to buy vegetables and fish for dinner. And when strangers asked them what school they went to and when they were from, they had to answer politely. Some of the children nearly got lost in the woods. Others swam so far they couldn't get back and had everyone worried. Others cut their feet on broken grass on the beach. In each case, everyone had to do their best to help. But mostly, it was all fun. There was a forest full of cicadas and a shop where you could buy popsicles. And they met a man on the beach who was building a big wooden boat all by himself. It was already boat-shaped, and the first thing each morning, they ran down to the beach to see how much more he had done. The man gave Totto-chan a very long and curly wooden saving. "How about the souvenir photograph?" asked the headmaster on the day they were to leave. They had never taken a photograph of them all together, and the children were excited at the idea. But no sooner was the teacher ready with her camera than someone had gone to the toilet, then someone else had his gym shoes on the wrong feet and had to change them around. Then when the teacher finally said, "Is everyone ready?" one or two children were lying on the ground, tired of holding their poses for so long. The whole process took a very long time, but the photograph with the sea in the background and each child posing according to his or her fancy became a treasured possession of each of them. One look at it and memories could flow back. The boat trip, the hot spring, the ghost stories, and the oops boy. Totto-chan never forgot the first happy summer vacation. Those were the days when you could still find crayfish in the pond near their house in Tokyo, and the garbage man's cart was pulled by a great big ox. Tonight's story time is over. I wish my angel a good night's sleep, and your busy day of preparing for a new school year ahead will be favorable and joyful. See you again next time.